Welcome back to Be Productive. For any of us that are running businesses, problems are going to happen. Sometimes we call them incidents. And when these incidents happen, we have to pay attention to them. And sometimes we have to document them because we want to be able to bring these in and also learn from them. So, to talk about how we can have proper documentation is my friend, Greg Shaffer. So, Greg, thanks and what for coming into the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So, when these incidents, we'll call them, happen, what are some of the key elements for effective reporting and responding and having a plan to really document and learn from these incidents as they happen?
So an information security incident is usually one or more events that happen that leads to the possibility that you might have a breach occur or loss of information or loss of system functionality, something along those lines. And therefore, it's important to understand that not all events create an incident, but when there is an incident, you want to have a plan in place in order to understand in a very, very methodical method. I guess that's redundant there, to go through the incident response, because the quicker that you can respond and get back to operations, the
Mhm.
less damage there would be. So you have to prepare for it. You have to think about this. This includes training. You have to establish communication channels about how you're going to communicate it, and then also talk to your vendors about it. Vendor management is huge, particularly in the small and mid-sized business world. A lot of the services that we use are through vendors. We don't have things in-house. You have to detect, so you have to be monitoring in some way, shape, or form. Then when you identify them, you have to contain it as soon as possible. What you want to do is that you want to make sure that the incident doesn't cause more damage. And so what does that mean? You got to stop it immediately and then isolate it so it can't spread. Then at that point in time, you want to eradicate it. So identify what happened. Is it, if it's a computer virus, get rid of the virus and get yourself to a point of recovery. That's the next part of an incident response plan. And recovery is exactly what it says it is. You have to get to a point of restoring normal business operations. Sometimes you may not be able to restore everything the way you were beforehand. You can temporarily restore it with different processes in place. We call that business continuity planning as well. So they kind of tie together.
Mhm.
And then finally, you want to learn the lessons. We call that in information security. It's kind of a little ghoulish, but we call it a postmortem. But you want to examine what happened so that you can learn from it. Now, certainly during all this, there's going to be elements where you're going to have to communicate, because the worst thing you can do is not communicate or communicate ineffectively with both your customers. You want to keep the reputational risk down to a minimum. And also, you're possibly going to have to communicate with law enforcement. Actually, probably if you determine that it's definitely a breach. You,
Mhm.
you got to understand your roles and responsibilities. Everybody has a role to play. You don't want to be in a incident where you get the finger pointing going on. So that's part of the plan. And then, of course, documenting it and testing the plan and then reviewing it as time goes on.
Yeah. Some of the things that I really appreciate what you're bringing together is, when we talk about this show, Be Productive, this is exactly what we're doing. We have plans to grow profit, but we also have to have plans in place for those threats to our growth. And that's what I hear you saying here is because when these breaches happen, when these incidents occur, they're going to zap our productivity. And it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's more a matter of when is it going to happen. And so we want to have these plans in place so that, as you said, we can get back to work as normal, as quickly as possible. So we want to do that. Now, one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past is also the fact of that the environment is constantly changing. And unfortunately, these risks, these types of breaches are also evolving. So,
Mhm.
how often should an organization look at updating, re strategizing, adapting their plans? What kind of frequency should they be looking at?
At least annually. They should be reviewing the plans annually and testing the plans annually. And that the testing doesn't mean just checking the box compliance. It's like, okay, we've got this in here, we've got this in here. Actually go through an exercise. Some will use a tabletop exercise and some sort of mock scenario. It helps with what I call muscle memory. If you practice what you said that you're doing in the plan. And You may find gaps. Usually you will find gaps every time you go through it because, as you mentioned, the external environment is changing as well too, the external threat environment. So that's one part that goes into the frequency of how often you want to test and review. But the other part is if you make any significant changes to your environment, you bring in a new system, you have a M&A happened, or you have a really large new client that's like 50% of your business or something along those lines. Any significant change, you want to rerun the test and review the plan.
Yeah. Ugh. I would imagine, for me as a business owner, but there's probably other business owners that are like, all this sounds great. Yes, I need this, but this is so outside of my wheelhouse. This is not something I would even know where to begin with. So when we look at partnering with a company like yours, what role does a company like yours, these, virtual companies do in helping us to plan and to document, all of these items that we need to have in place?
We can put it into four buckets. The first is before something happens. So training and preparing. Some of that is we will lead those tabletop exercises because you want someone outside of the organization ideally to lead it because um, you need that independence and you need to understand how the organization is going to actually be responding and sometimes that looks into also what kind of policies you have in place. We talked about the incident response plan. That's part of the preparedness. We will help develop that. Now, during an incident, the virtual CISO is going to be an advisor to your incident response team. The virtual CISO is not usually going to be one of the in the trenches responder. We're not digital forensics experts. There are folks out there that do a very good job with that. And that's very important to consider because you want to make sure you're preserving evidence just in case, and you want to have the right people with the right skill set there at the right time. Then third will be the post-incident analysis. We're going to help you with that post-mortem. We're going to help you look at, well, what went well, what didn't go well, and what can be done better. So this would be areas with regards to even how you're reporting it and then maybe incorporating that into the testing plan and the incident response plan itself. And that's for the fourth one with the continuous improvement. And that's everything is continuous. Everything is changing. Nothing is static in information security. You may need a new tool, for example, if the monitoring wasn't successful. And that doesn't mean a tool that you necessarily bring in-house. Like, for example, Microsoft Office 3, or they call it Microsoft 365 now, has excellent monitoring tools within there. And it may mean just activating some of those tools there. That's what a virtual CISO can help with as well, recommending where you can help mitigate those risks.
Love it. So, talk to us a little bit about your company. Again, you've been doing this for a very long time. You are what I consider to be an expert in this field. So, talk to us a little bit about your company and some of the things that you guys really specialize in.
We were founded in 2017. My goal of creating the company was that I wanted to help small and mid-sized businesses. I saw a real gap there where, and it still exists today, where the small and mid-sized businesses really haven't been paid much attention from the greater information security community, at least not as much as they should right now. And they also don't have the resources to bring on a chief information security officer. It can be quite expensive. So we provide that fractionally. And we're not limited to just one industry. We work across various industries, various verticals, various sizes of companies as well, too. We've done private, we've done public, we've done companies from anywhere from several thousand employees down to 4 employees. So really it's dependent upon your need, but every company has a need for proper information security.
Yeah, awesome. And Greg, I love having you here on the show. And one of the things that you have really done for me is you've taken something that can be very overwhelming and very scary and you simplify it. And so for all of you out there that are starting to get the wheels turning in your brain, having somebody like Greg in your corner that is going to be able to talk to you on a human level. You don't talk over me, you talk with me, and you really make it easily digestible. And I appreciate that so much. So thank you for being here on the show. Thank you for educating us and for making us stronger each and every day. And for all of those that are watching, I hope that you took some notes. I hope that you jotted down how to get in touch with Greg and his company, because if you want to stay productive, you need to have all of these tips, all of these strategies, and all of these systems in play for you so that you do not miss a beat. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back for even more Be Productive.